So yeah, welcome everyone to today's webinar, the Agency Search Roadmap 2026. I'm Cara Corbett, Partner Growth Manager at SUSO Digital. And today I'm joined by Jamie Stanley, who's our Head of Content, and then a very special guest, Andrew Bruce Smith, who's an AI, PR, and communications technologist and also an agency consultant at, is it pronounced Escherman? Escherman?
Indeed.
Okay,
yes.
I'm glad I got that right.
Very good.
A little bit about Andrew. I'm in a really useful WhatsApp group chat that Andrew started when he posts the latest findings about AI and its applications in communication and marketing. So I personally know he's super equipped to speak on this subject, but Andrew, do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and your relationship with AI and search and SEO, and take it away?
Yes, I'll try and keep it hopefully mercifully brief. So I've worked in media, PR, and communications for 40 years, but my interest in AI goes back even further. I studied at Edinburgh University in the early 1980s and discovered the book Gödel, Escherman. My company name is a sort of pathetic homage to one of the names from that book. And that sparked a lifelong interest in artificial intelligence. I helped to found the CIPR's AI panel in 2018, which is 4 years before ChatGPT arrived. In relation to search, I've been getting my hands dirty, involved in search for close to 20 years, and have long advocated that the PR industry probably missed a trick very early on in not being more involved. But yes, cut a long story short, those are kind of common strands to the work, consulting work and training work that I've been doing for the best part of 15 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Well, yeah, if one thing's for certain, agencies have seen more change in the last 12 months than probably in the previous decade combined. From the rollout of AI mode to ChatGPT announcing that they're going to start testing ads very, very soon. Today, we're going to recap the turbulence that happened in 2025, and more importantly, go over our predictions for 2026, and then discuss how agencies can navigate another expected very fun year in search. So we'll start by looking at the key 2025 updates that took the search industry by storm and made waves in our client work and reporting. And then we'll move into our 2026 predictions, covering everything from organic to paid, even agentic, and of course, what AI systems we think are going to dominate in the market this year. And finally, we'll end on the very big question: how do agencies adapt to these changes with confidence? We'll provide some practical advice to get you prepared and then take with you into Q1 and beyond. And don't worry, we're also going to have time for questions at the very end, as always. So feel free to pop those in the question box on the top right. I think it's called comments. Put it up there in the top right, and then we'll address those at the end. Hopefully we'll have time. All right. So 2025 was nothing short of turbulent right from the start. So Jamie, how about you kick us off in January, where Google made some pretty major updates to their quality rater guidelines?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. This is what in January, what we've kind of quite sort of artfully called the AI slop crackdown. Basically, Google updated their quality rater guidelines to penalize low effort, low value AI generated content, as you can see on screen, which is, again, quite a lofty way of saying they basically cracked down on AI content that ultimately wasn't very good. Something important to understand here for both agencies and also for your clients is that this crackdown, and just generally kind of one thing that we saw throughout the year, that it doesn't mean that you can't use AI to write or generate content, or that all AI content will get penalized. It just means that generic mass-produced content that paraphrases existing search results without adding anything unique or any extra value could get flagged by their human reviewers and therefore not perform as well in the SERPs. For example, if your client is just using a prompt to, say, write a 1,000-word blog on SEO, then they will be at risk because there's no art to that. There's no extra added value to that. To survive, what they need to do, the extra layer they need on top of that, is to add unique data, personal experience, or a really strong point of view that a machine simply can't scrape from somewhere else, basically.
Nice. Andrew, do you have anything to add from like a PR perspective?
Well, other than the quality rated guidelines document itself, I've been pointing out to PR professionals for over a decade that if they read nothing else, that was a really useful document to help them kind of get from the horse's mouth how Google frames what it believes is, high quality content. In fact, it's been there for a very long time. There's actually a little section where it advises the quality raters themselves. If you're trying to kind of figure out who's the entity or the person behind this piece of content, how can you go about sort of satisfying yourself that they are truly trustworthy, authoritative? And it suggests go and see if they're being written about in reputable media titles. So it's always been the case that in a kind of ironic way, positive media coverage has a kind of indirect effect on influencing the quality raters themselves. And as Jamie quite rightly put it out, I mean, Google said a couple of years ago, we're not saying you can't use AI. In fact, we don't care. All we care about is the content appears to be being found useful by the end user. So if it's high results and people click through and they don't click back, which kind of suggests they did find it useful, well, that's fine. That's fine as far as Google's concerned. But yes, the danger is lazy use of AI. They're mediocrity machines. So great, you can churn out more content than is humanly possible, because it isn't humanly possible, but it won't do any good because it's the same as everything else. So why is a search engine gonna give any kind of credence to what is exactly the same as what it's already seen before? So yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Well, then we had a bit of a break from major changes in search, or at least, none of the major ones that we want to go over, but about until May, when Google officially rolled out AI Mode, its very first conversational search engine, and that started in the United States. So this new interface really moved users to that zero-click search default, with over 94% of searches in AI Mode ending without a visit to a website, according to SEMrush data. The adoption was somewhat slow. In the first 2 months, the share of AI Mode usage among Google search sessions increased from only 0.25% in early May to a little over 1% by early July. But since then, it's been rolled out to over 200 countries and has more than 75 million daily active users worldwide. So this update really changed the game for marketers because we inevitably saw dips in website traffic due to that zero-click nature of the tool. So it really created more of a focus on mentions and citations as a KPI, which we're seeing lots of people talking about now, over clicks and organic traffic, right? And just as an aside, AI Mode is increasingly getting more personal. So Google just announced their personal intelligence feature, I think 2 weeks ago in AI Mode. So that's going to allow opted users to connect their Gmail and their Google Photos and then really give an added layer of that personal context for their responses. So yeah, the second half of the year is when things really started to heat up and we saw lots of changes related to infrastructure and agents. Andrew and Jamie, which one of you guys want to take it? Do you guys want to talk about the Cloudflare news that happened in July?
Yeah, so I guess sort of it was, should we say contentious? Is that the right word, I suppose?
Yeah.
So basically, those who kind of weren't sort of, just to give a bit of context. So Cloudflare announced a sort of new policy making AI crawler blocking the default setting for websites on its platform, which is about 20% of all websites on the internet. So billions and billions of sites, if we're really sort of thinking about it. This really marked the beginning of the end of the sort of kind of free-for-all scraping era. And it meant that if your client's website was hosted on Cloudflare, their content was blocked from showing up in AI responses and citations unless the permissions were manually changed in the back end. At the same time, Cloudflare introduced a pay-per-crawl feature, so giving publishers a new way to monetize and control who had access to their content. These changes kind of forced many website owners to choose whether they wanted to be crawled for visibility or protect their IP. And just as an aside, in our analysis and our experience, and talking to our clients and also kind of having conversations with other people who run sites, plenty of websites are still blocking access to these bots and don't even know about it. So as marketers, we really need to verify that this isn't happening to our clients if they want their content to be visible or cited. So you could be doing everything right for AI search. Obviously, AI search is still an emerging kind of, discipline, if you like, and we're still kind of working out all the ins and outs of it, and we're learning as we go. But it might mean that you're doing everything right already, and the sites aren't getting any AI traffic because of a change in the system connected to this Cloudflare update. And yeah, it's the internet keeps you guessing, basically, I think is one of the main lessons to learn. But yeah, if you don't know whether this is happening to your sites or your client sites yet, then I'd say check tomorrow morning, if not tonight, double check.
You can also reach out to us if you don't know how to do that. we can check for you.
Always on brand. Thanks,
Andrew, I know that you speak a lot about content publishers and probably the impact on that in your industry is really great. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of this is kind of a subset of a kind of just a broader challenge, particularly for media sites. They are kind of caught in a bit of a bind. On the one hand, it's been true for 20 years that the single biggest driver of traffic to any media site kind of anywhere was Google search. It was referral traffic from Google. In order to get that traffic, you have to allow Google to index your content. But that was the deal that was kind of struck in. I guess it wasn't a contract officially, but we let you index our content, and in return, we get traffic, we can serve ads, we make money. That kind of contract is kind of been broken now. If as is clearly happening with certainly AI overviews in Google, hey, we'll crawl your content, index it. Sure, we'll use it to fuel an AI overview, but wave goodbye to the volume of traffic you would have had in the past. With the likes of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, etc., you've got this kind of distinction between allowing an AI vendor to crawl your content in order to index it so that they can then use that to potentially train a future version of the model, versus I'm allowing you to crawl it in order to capture content to provide the fuel to serve up an answer. So there's kind of a bit of a dilemma here. As I say, in the case of Google, it's get indexed, and if you don't let them index your content, well, you're never going to appear in anything. So do you want to completely disappear? Well, no, but at the same time, the ever decline in referral traffic. The Reuters Institute of Journalism report that came out a couple of weeks ago, where they talked to media owners worldwide, and the general consensus everywhere is they continue to expect to see a continuing decline in kind of Google search referral traffic. I think 40% over the next 2 to 3 years was the figure that was bandied around there. So, but yes, it's a consideration, I guess, for anybody anywhere, which is, do we want our content to be accessible to AI search engines? And there are clearly kind of pros and cons in terms of, yes, we clearly want that visibility, versus do we want our kind of IP to be freely given away to somebody else, namely an AI company, who will benefit from it to improve and train their models.
Yep, definitely a dilemma for a lot of people. All right, moving on. One of the most critical trends of 2025 has been the absolute dominance of Reddit as a primary citation source. Pretty much across every major model, from Google's AI mode to Perplexity, Reddit has emerged as the top cited domain, often outperforming traditional mainstays like Wikipedia and YouTube. And when you think about it, it's not surprising at all, because LLMs are actively seeking out that human-to-human verification. So when a user asks for a recommendation or a fix, the AI treats a conversation between real people on a subreddit as more trustworthy than a polished brand page, for example. So for agencies, this means that your client's visibility is also now heavily tied to their social proof footprint. If your brand isn't being discussed authentically by real users in these communities, then you're actually missing a massive layer on the new search ecosystem. So we're telling our partners, you don't just need to rank on Google anymore. You now need to be part of a conversation where both humans and the machines are looking for the truth. Now, we also have to look at major validation for the PR industry that came out in July, when Muckrack released a landmark study finding that 85% of links cited in AI-generated answers were earned media sources. So this really confirms the fundamental role that PR plays in GEO, because we know that AI models rely on authoritative third-party sources to establish credibility and generate trustworthy answers. So for our agency partners, this is really the ultimate proof that you can't just SEO your way into an AI response anymore, or at all. If your client doesn't have a consistent stream of independent validation from third-party sources, then they're simply not going to have the authority that the models like ChatGPT or Gemini are looking for. It really confirms that in 2026, PR has become one of the most important pieces to search visibility. Andrew, I'm going to pass that one to you because that's your industry, your wheelhouse.
Okay. I guess the first thing I have to say is that there's in capital letters, big caveat that comes into play here. I mean, it would be lovely to think, yes, earned media is kind of, universally the kind of top cited source in AI search results. And of course, that isn't necessarily true. It goes to the point that there's so many different variables and factors involved that I always get slightly irritated when you see on LinkedIn somebody making some kind of definitive claim about what is or isn't the case, and you're just going to go, yeah, but that's not really universally true. It might be true for a given kind of subset of a particular platform, a particular set of prompts. But it's never going to be universally applicable. I mean, to go back to the other point about Reddit, again, I would argue it isn't necessarily true that it's universally the kind of like number one source for everything. Yeah, it pops up quite a lot, but there's enormous variability, almost from like day to day, week to week. There was the Ahrefs study that came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago, saying that the variability in the sources that Google uses to generate AI overviews seems to kind of change every 48 hours. Everything is in massive flux at the moment. And I know people want to have some kind of stability, and they want to have kind of like definitive answers. And I know we crave that, but I think reality is we just kind of have to really accept that there's an enormous amount of kind of, uncertainty here. Having said that, I think it is true that earned media, in some shape or form, clearly is really quite important in terms of whichever of the platforms and models are going to use to kind of generate the outputs. So yes, it wasn't just Muckrack. There's been other studies have been kind of suggesting similar kinds of things there.
Yeah, and just to add on your point about variability, there's a really good study that just came out by SparkToro or Rand Fishkin, and he did a study on the variability of the types of responses that people will get back, and you'd have to, I don't remember the exact number, but you'd have to put in the same prompt essentially like thousands of times to get the same list of brand responses back to you. So I recommend everyone.
You never will. That's the whole point. Yeah. You'll never get exactly the same answer.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Jamie, do you want to add anything on that?
I think this kind of, I think Andrew kind of covered it. I think, and I can see some comments in the chat from Greg about kind of Reddit. And obviously, I think, Andrew, you just sort of echoed the idea that this is not an absolute rule on Reddit, and obviously things are changing on a continuous basis. I think the key thing with Reddit is that in every respect, I would always, and I've said this to both of you separately, always tread carefully with Reddit as a brand or anyone who's actually going to be looking at this strategically, in that the whole reason why Reddit is seen, and we're not just talking about AI search, we're talking about traditional Google as well. You just have to look at the top page of Google results, which we'll get onto in a minute, but the fact that that's still happening. We talk about AI search all the time, but clients we're speaking to are increasingly interested in how they can utilize Reddit. And I think that's something that's, if you can find a definitive strategy that works there, then you could be a billionaire tomorrow, because it's the whole point of working on Reddit is that it's incredibly hard to do, because it's all about authenticity and it's all about not marketing. And if you can, there's something that generally marketers struggle to do, is to act not like marketers. And if you do that on Reddit, you'll get banned, and you may even do much more harm than good. So tread carefully and tread very strategically, and really think about what you're doing if you're going to try and approach that as a channel.
Yeah, maybe that's a whole other separate webinar for another time. But Jamie, take us into September of last year when Google made some changes to their parameters.
I'd love to. So yeah, this was sort of Google dropping a bit of a bomb, really. And I think I said this to you earlier, Cara, but I've never actually said this parameter out loud. So I'm gonna call it the 100 parameter rather than the ampersand num equals 100 parameter, just because it's snappier. But it's basically got disabled in September by Google. What this basically is the URL parameter that allows the top 100 Google results to show on one page. So this caused a bit of a panic in lots of agencies and among lots of kind of data teams, because Google Search Console impressions and rankings plummeted overnight, basically, which made for quite flawed client reporting. So we weren't getting the same sort of picture that we were before. And also, if you looked at your reports from the first half of the year versus the second half of the year on the same graph, they looked pretty terrifying. But it soon got even worse, because Google then sort of tightened the screws on the top the top 10 results tracking, which made it almost impossible for popular rank tracking tools, Ahrefs, SEMrush, whatever you want to call them, to scrape rankings beyond page 1. This basically meant that lots of agencies and lots of kind of data teams had to consider capping reports at between position 10 and 20. However, the industry didn't actually stay down for that long. Rank trackers like Ahrefs have kind of found sophisticated workarounds involving pagination, multi-page requests, and that's kind of given us back that kind of deep competitive data we need to prove long-term SEO growth for our clients. But yeah, the whole kind of question of how we prove the impact and the results of what we're doing in an ever-changing kind of landscape is the sort of thing that's it's not new, but there have been some sort of seismic shifts in the last few months that we've really had to maneuver around, to be honest, and really kind of find a path through.
Andrew, I know you have thoughts from like a measurement perspective.
I think well, as Jimmy's alluded to, it was obviously the usual suspects in terms of keyword volume, metrics, numbers, SEMrush, etc. Or anybody who had previously been relying on being able to get access to 100 results in one go. Now you can't. So in order to maintain the same level of data, you've got to perform 10 times the number. Well, I'm simplifying here, but 10 times the amount of effort to get the same amount of information. So it's going to increase costs and so on and so forth. So I guess technically the SEO tool vendors could have just raised their prices, but of course that wouldn't go down too well. But equally, I think it in a kind of bizarre way, I've long thought, what use is that? What use is it knowing that, you've gone from position 98 to position 77? I mean, yes, it's good to see that directionally it's going the right way, but ultimately we all know, unless you're on that first page or even indeed in the top 3 or 4 results, that's really where you have to be. So maybe in a bizarre way, Google's doing us all a favor by trying to kind of de-emphasize agonizing over those sorts of numbers and getting us to kind of really focus more on not just search visibility, but tying that to outcomes and just getting better to perhaps a kind of more rigorous approach to kind of demonstrating impact and value.
Yeah, just to add one final thing on that is it may not make me very popular among some of my sort of agency colleagues, but the fewer places there are to hide in the data, the better. But I think this is I actually think this is a very good thing in lots of ways, as long as we're just reporting using the same parameters month to month. If you're comparing one month where you had 10,000 in the top 100 to then not having any, it doesn't look great. But yeah, really doing what you're actually doing rather than the stuff that you're using to kind of fluff out your reports. Totally.
Okay, moving on to October, when the AI race really heated up with the rollout of ChatGPT Atlas, which is OpenAI's browser, which definitely, if you've used it, you can see that you can use that conversational assistant and an AI agent in tandem with the web. So this was pretty cool. However, it wasn't actually the first agentic browser. By then, Perplexity had already released Comet in July. Andrew, are you using either of these, or are you just having Claude kind of do everything for you?
Well, I absolutely began using Comet back in, I think I got it in May because I was on an early beta program. Anyway, long story short, I switched from Chrome to Comet May last year, and I haven't gone back. So I've said cheerio to Chrome for all this time. Now, of course, as we saw yesterday, Google's hardly going to sit there doing nothing. So they're obviously adding more and more agentic capability to Chrome. Obviously, we had the Atlas browser from OpenAI. Microsoft Edge is going to do the same. The agentic browser will be just a standard thing. I can't see how it won't be. I think in terms of its impact on search and PR, etc., it's obviously from a user behavior standpoint, as more and more people use agentic browsers. I mean, clearly it's going to affect how they interact with content. I mean, I do it all the time. You go to a web page and you think, great, I'll just click the assistant button and say summarize the page, or from a PR context, analyze that page for sentiment, entities, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that there's I think, let's be honest, we classically, we open up a page, we kind of scroll, we read, we might click the odd link or two. That's been the extent of our interaction really with websites for since Netscape, and that's clearly changing. I'm not part of the camp that says, well, actually, if you take agentic AI to its logical conclusion, who needs a website anymore? Just get your agent to go off and just do stuff. So you, the human being, don't need to even sit there interacting with a browser. I don't quite see that happening as a kind of universal behavior in the next few minutes. But there are going to be some people who will go that route. But yes, the use, the exposure of pretty much everybody on the web through their browsers to AI agentry, if that's the right way to describe it, I think is going to have quite a profound impact on both user behavior, which in turn will have a knock-on effect clearly on so many things.
Totally. Okay, moving on to November, when we hit that holiday gift shopping rush, both AI Mode and ChatGPT rolled out advanced commerce features that essentially turned them into personal shopping assistants. So for e-commerce clients, this meant a massive shift in how products were discovered and bought using AI. So Google introduced agentic checkout, where users could track a specific item's price and then even have Google complete a purchase for them once it hits that budget. They even integrated a Let Google Call feature, where the AI calls local stores on users' behalf to check inventory in real time. Now, simultaneously, OpenAI launched its shopping research experience. So instead of users sifting through dozens of sites, they could now have a conversational research session where ChatGPT builds a personal buyer's guide, comparing everything from specs, reviewing quality sources, and weighing trade-offs, all within the chat interface. So this is really the end of the funnel reality that we're now navigating in 2026.
Yeah, and we can see the situation developing in early January as well. So Bing, for those who don't know, Bing Copilot caught up with AI Mode and ChatGPT by introducing agentic checkout features, which for those of us who love e-commerce and want get sort of obsessive over these things, this is huge. So it looks like Shopify is actively working on improving the infrastructure for AI commerce. So they opened a waiting list for its new agentic plan, which is something that's kind of will change, could potentially change everything for millions of e-commerce sites across the internet. But Google has also just announced its Universal Commerce Protocol, which helps merchants and platforms share commerce catalog data consistently across Google services. So the whole process, Andrew, you talked earlier about kind of, how, agents can just go off and do things for you. But we're basically sending robots to the shops now, which is, it's, I don't know which direction it is going to be the dominant kind of path to this, because there are so many different sort of competing kind of ways in which the whole process of buying things online is going to adapt over the next couple of years. But this is, one of all of these areas are interesting, but for me, this is one of these things that I could literally just kind of, immerse myself in for days and just, never come back and just come back a sort of gibbering wreck. But I'll have to see anything that you would kind of add to this.
No, I think it goes back to agentic browsers, because Perplexity for a little while has been kind of providing some of those kind of e-commerce related agentic capabilities. I think it was Amazon that's blocked Perplexity's agents from accessing Amazon, because they're like, hang on a minute, we don't want your agent kind of like crawling our site and helping people to kind of like make decisions about what they may or may not buy. So again, it's all part of the kind of unbelievably kind of dynamic and kind of fluid situation that we find ourselves in. But even on a simplistic basis, I've got a little shortcut in my comment browser where if I'm on say an Amazon page looking at a product, I say, hey, can you go off and just find any other additional unbiased, authentic, proper customer reviews and find other potential rival products? And 5 minutes later, the agent comes back and says, here you go. So, oh, right, okay, that's giving me a much more kind of rounded perspective on the decision-making process. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually say, look, go off, and once you've found what you think's the best one, just go and buy it for me. I'm not quite ready to do that, but there's no reason why somebody who wanted to couldn't set up that kind of process themselves. So yeah, it's very interesting whether are you selling to the human being or are you selling to the agent that the human being has briefed to go off and represent them out there in the great kind of online e-commerce arena.
Yeah. And one thing I will add, like the importance of like your product feed is now more important than ever, right? We're kind of moving away from that very fluffy marketing speak and product descriptions to now being very specific with like the specs, the sizes, who it's meant to be for, like things like that. That's really what's going to make you stand out. So that technical side is really, really important in AI e-commerce as well. All right. So it's clear that there were a lot of major changes in 2025, and that wasn't even all of them. We would be here all day if we went through all of them. But if last year was any indication, I think we can expect that 2026 will come with just as many, if not more changes, especially as that AI race gets tighter and tighter. So with that in mind, let's look ahead at some of our predictions for the year, our roadmap for 2026. It's defined by several different pillars, as you can see on the screen. So Jamie, maybe talk to us about the machine-shaped voice.
Yeah, so this, I think kind of anyone like who spends as much time in the internet as us is probably already noticing this, but what we're kind of seeing is that the general kind of language and communication of the internet is changing in the sort of, even at a very sort of semantic level. If you think about how we interact with AI search, it's more conversational and it's much more asking questions rather than searching for phrases. So as a result, what we're seeing is kind of brands and copywriters and content producers and whatever kind of really leaning into that. And what's basically happening is that sort of because AI extracts and restates our content, we're seeing a shift towards what we've called here a very machine-shaped voice, which is very concise, declarative, I think is the correct way to say that. I've only ever seen that written down, and citation ready. So what basically people are, in layman's terms, people are writing for AI search rather than writing for traditional search, or not simultaneously writing for traditional search and not writing with the same level of unique brand voice that we're used to seeing. But to win here, agencies need to move to kind of modular content. So apart from covering a topic in depth, which is still hugely important, you need to show expertise, you need to provide extra value, as we talked about before. Writers also need to start structuring their content in reusable kind of informational blocks, headlines, data points, CTAs tagged with metadata. So an AI agent can grab exactly what it needs quickly and then repurpose it without having to change too much. You're basically providing it in a format that the question it's being asked has the correct format answer for the question that it is being asked, that it can grab quickly and then it can just immediately turn around and then hand back to its users. So yeah, you see this sort of all meeting in the middle and this sort of like slight homogeny of tone of voice is something that we're going to have to bear with through the next sort of year or so as people work out how this stuff works. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on because it's already creeping in.
Nice. Let's talk about reputation engineering over link building and agentic conversions. Which of you two want to take that one?
Whoa.
I'm happy to kind of just sort of kick it off. So in traditional Google search, the backlink was the sort of main way that Google understood authority of your website and brand. Is the easiest way of thinking about it. As AI search becomes more widely adopted in 2026 and beyond, the link itself becomes less important than the reputational signals required for AI visibility. So basically there will be more demand for reputation management, not just with earned media, but also in places across the web, like Reddit and reviews, as we've already spoken about before, obviously with the caveats that we've already mentioned. But this is going to because LLMs need consistent messaging across the web to feel confident to cite or recommend a brand. There is no position 8 of ChatGPT. There is no page 3 of Perplexity. You're either cited or you aren't. But additionally, there will be more of a focus on highlighting those unique selling points that our clients can offer to make them stand out. Because standing out, they're basically either citing you or they aren't, as I've said to you before. So really, you just need to give them all the signals they can to show that you're trusted ahead of all of your rivals, I suppose.
Nice. And how does like original data and unique data play a point in that? Andrew, maybe you want to speak a bit to that, focus on originality?
Well, I clearly, from a kind of PR and comms context, reputation, argue that is what PR and communication is all about, the management of reputation. So there was a little experiment that PR Week did in the UK last year, where they went to ChatGPT and they took the top 30 agencies from the top 150 and simply went to ChatGPT and said, hey, for each agency, we'll ask the question, is agency X, any good? And then examined what came back. They got in touch before they wrote the piece, and I said, I'm glad you did, because as I said, in some cases it was nearly libelous what was coming back, and I said, well, bear in mind that you only perform that search once. If you performed it 10 times, you'd almost certainly see a kind of a variation in what that synthesized answer came back with, and the sources that we used. But for example, in one case, or in a couple of cases, for example, Glassdoor employee reviews seem to be having a massive impact on the response to that sort of question and input. But I think the broader point is that, and this is true of search as well, that reputation is increasingly filtered through the lens of what people get back in response to their questions, either through Google, either through just vanilla Google, or through AI mode, or through ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude, whichever tool rather you're working with. So it raises some sort of big questions for the world of comms, which is, well, what can we do? If we discover that there seems to be a rather kind of alarming response to those sorts of inputs, what can we actually do to kind of change or influence what those AI platforms are saying about us? And again, we've already seen people say, oh, we know, hire us and we'll go in and we'll sort it for you, kind of thing. I'm thinking, really? I'm not quite convinced that it's that simple. But at the same time, doing nothing, I suspect is not an option either. But yes, long and short of it is that increasingly people are, whether we like it or not, they are choosing to accept the answers they get back from an AI tool as kind of gospel. Well, in fact, there was I think it was a Microsoft study, wasn't it? And they seem to suggest that there's a kind of age disparity in that younger people are far more likely to be using AI, and they're also far more likely to accept what it tells them. So
very impressionable. Yeah.
So there is that.
So fair. Okay, as for agentic conversions, with advanced features rolled out by major LLMs, websites need to be prepared for those AI agents taking action on behalf of users, like purchases and even reservations. We kind of already touched on this a little bit, but to be clear, this isn't only going to affect e-commerce brands, right? It's not just going to be agents making purchases of certain products on a site. This change is also going to affect subscription-based and reservation-based businesses as well. So there's even something to say that humans won't visit websites at all pretty soon, but that's obviously debatable. We've talked about that. But they might just have an agent go and gather information about a service or a business for them, right? So in this case, as I mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that our clients' websites are technically sound and accessible so that these agents or bots can actually get the information that they need. I think that's a good segue to speak about technical SEO, schema markup. Andrew, I know that was something that you wanted to talk about. I'll pass that over to you.
Yeah, if we take schema markup, I mean, schema markup's not new, but quite rightly, it's long been regarded as something that people should pay attention to and implement. But of course, it has historically been something that you clearly would need to rely upon people with the technical competence to do it. I mean, I've talked about schema markup to PR people for a long time, but I knew what the next point would be. They go, well, I haven't got the first clue about how to go about doing it, and I'm not going to do it. So let's just move on, shall we? But increasingly, it's all kind of tied in, where if it's machines that we're communicating with, then anything we can do to help the machine, as it were, not to kind of oversimplify it, understand, not just what the content is about, but who are the entities behind it. So schema.org's been around forever, and that's kind of loads of good information there about the kind of the labels, the schemas that are in use today. But ironically, I would argue that from a reputational standpoint, making sure that both humans and machines kind of understand who you are, what do you want to be known for, and making sure that there's clarity, consistency of that wherever possible. I think it's kind of interesting now, of course, that anybody, not just a PR person, but anybody who wants to, could say to any AI tool, well, here's the page, using kind of schema.org as your reference point. Could you suggest to me what a schema markup for that page might look like? And they'll look at it and go, oh, what does it mean? Well, ask it to explain it to you, and it will. And then literally you can copy and paste that schema code and just stick it in the HTML, because it's not there for humans. Of course, it's there for crawlers, agents, and bots to kind of go, oh, great. That absolutely clarifies who you are, what the content is about. So the thinking being, of course, that the more helpful you make it to crawler, the more likely that it's your content that is going to be considered worthy to rank, or rather to be considered for being included in the synthesized response that the ultimate audience will see.
Totally. Yeah. Not just important for AI search, but also important for traditional Google. Takes up a lot of extra space on that search engine results pages, which, we want to take up as much space as possible. But yeah, I've mentioned this on previous webinars before. We did one with Josh from Profound. And there's actually a really important one for PR professionals. There's a news article schema. So if you're putting out press or you're putting out news articles, that's just something right then and there that should be in every communications professional's tool belt. Okay, so moving over to one of the more significant shifts that we're preparing our partners for, the convergence of paid and organic budgets into sort of a single AI visibility strategy. So OpenAI announced it's starting to test out ads in the US for ChatGPT's free and Go users. But it's unclear at the moment how brands can start participating in these tests. There's very little information. What I do know, I saw an article, I think it was yesterday, on Search Engine Journal, where they were saying that the cost per impression is going to be about 3 times higher than Meta. So stay tuned to that. But I personally think that, sorry?
I was going to say, the figure I saw was $60, a CPM rate of $60.
Yeah, so I hope you guys have deep pockets. But I personally think that for the time being, ChatGPT might just hijack Google's sponsored results and then show brands that are already bidding in Google ads for now, because right now they're actually constantly using Google's framework for pretty much all of their features, particularly for grounding their responses. If you put in something in a ChatGPT, they're going to do a query fan out and they're going to go onto Google's index and search the web that way. But there's also been some research, I believe it was Kevin Indig that did it, that showed that in their sort of shopping feature, they're actually using Google Shopping directly, the responses that are showing up in the responses on ChatGPT are almost 1-to-1 with the ones that are showing up in Google Shopping. So Pretty funny, but I think the industry is going to move away from keyword-based PPC and then instead bid on certain relevant topics or entities instead. So, for example, when a conversation is happening about places to visit in Mexico City, for example, maybe an ad could pop up to book a hotel in a certain area, or a specific tour could be advertised. And of course, with the newest agentic checkout features in ChatGPT, AI mode, and Copilot, and integrations with Shopify, it's very likely that these LLMs might introduce sponsored product listings, capturing users right when they're asking the AI to help me decide. So data shows that while AI platforms might drive lower traffic volumes to websites, the conversion rates are typically up to 5 times higher with the data that we're seeing, because that intent is so much more deeper, right? A lot of the times people are using these chatbots and they want to make a purchase right away. So anything to add on PPC or paid search from either of you?
Well, just from a kind of PR and communications perspective, I guess this with the age old thing, isn't it? That well, your own media, so you don't pay for anything. The minute you mention paying for anything, oh well, that's marketing, that's advertising. So the comms and the PR budget doesn't get a sniff of it. And I've long advocated, well, that's not right. If you're on managing organic social, for example, why shouldn't you also manage the paid budget? Why is somebody else running that and always treating it as a kind of totally separate and non-integrated aspect of it? The simple fact is that whether we like it or not, this has been true, I think, for so long now, that if you want to guarantee visibility anywhere, well, you can. You have to pay for it. And again, I think historically, PR and communications has seen itself as kind of not having to, pay a media cost, but you kind of earn the right to have that visibility. But I think at the same time, in its broadest sense, if you're responsible for managing your reputation, why shouldn't kind of PR and comms also have access to and perhaps take over those kind of paid budgets as well? On social, certainly, I've long advocated that it's comms that should run the show for both organic social and paid social, but that's just me. Call me self-serving.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple other things here. I want to wrap up the predictions in about 2 minutes, Andrew, and these last ones are yours. So Claude Cowork, Claude Code, and then that little bit about earned media. Take it away. Timer's on. Okay,
I'll be very quick. I guess something happened over the Christmas break, because a lot of people obviously use that Christmas break not to eat more mince pies, but to say, hey, this Claude Code thing, I keep hearing it's quite good, so I'm going to try it out. And then suddenly from that, Anthropic built Cowork for normies in 10 days. Long and short of it, again, this is kind of an example of the pace of tech change. It's agentic AI, the ability to instruct your kind of tool just to kind of go off and do stuff for you, whilst you can now go off and do something else, kind of perhaps more useful, interesting. And I think it opens up the possibility of being able to kind of manage. Rather than having this kind of like back and forth interaction with a chatbot, it's kind of instructing, building or whatever things to kind of work on your behalf. So that's got implications both as end users, consumers, but also from a work perspective. This week's kind of big thing, or the last 2 weeks, of course, is Claudebot, spelt CLAWDBOT, which has now been renamed because it sounds like Anthropic didn't like the similarity to Claude. Again, that's just a further reflection of this increase. Agentic AI was talked a lot about last year, and yes, there were lots of sort of impressive demos, but I don't think we crossed into the mainstream. And I think we're already seeing the real world impact of that already before the end of the first month of the year. So I suspect we'll see more and more of that occurring. Earned media, again, call me self-serving, but I think it's true that it does reinforce the idea that a focus on continuing to try and gain positive media coverage online is still absolutely vital. People assuming that, well, who reads this stuff anymore? Well, okay, maybe not as many human beings might read it overtly and directly. That is me to say it ceases to contribute any value at all. And given the obvious role it plays in providing a lot of the fuel for AI-driven search responses, then, yeah, as I say, call me biased, but I think it's still really important.
Perfect. All right, moving on to some little tidbits of advice. So Andrew, you obviously work with many consultants and agencies. So given what you're hearing from them on a day-to-day basis, and obviously we're seeing tons of change happening last year, but also what we're expecting, what's like one piece of advice that you'd like to give to help them navigate everything flawlessly?
Oh, wow, flawlessly.
Flawlessly. As flawlessly as possible.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, here we are, sort of 3 years in from the launch of ChatGPT, and I think it's true to say, certainly within the PR world, certainly in the kind of the PR agency sector, you'd be hard pushed to find an agency that doesn't use AI in some shape or form. I would argue that even now, on the whole, it's still being used in a kind of rather rudimentary fashion. There's still an awful lot more that people could be doing, but obviously they don't know. So I think there's still a bit of a gap between the capability of the technology and human beings' ability to actually just wrap their head around it and obviously kind of practically, implement that into their own kind of day-to-day workflows. I think often as well, people get very sort of distracted by this whole idea of, what's the best tool? And it's like, well, there is no one best tool that can handle literally everything. And even if there was, it probably wouldn't be tomorrow. So that's just a fact of life, that you'll have that kind of constant sort of, chopping and changing. And you're much better off, I think, going back to first principles and understanding, well, why does our agency exist? What is the value that we believe we're bringing to the party? What are the needs of the clients and the prospect base that we're to target? And you reverse engineer back from that to understand, well, in an ideal world, this is the capability, this is the offer, this is the proposition of value that we can deliver, and then figure out from that. And it's not just the tech, of course, is it? It's the mix of human beings. It's it's clearly impacting kind of roles, at a kind of simplistic level. Some people might say, well, who needs junior personnel anymore when, quite frankly, all the tasks they perform can be done by AI agents at a fraction of the cost? Okay, well, good luck if you decide to get rid of all your juniors or have a hiring freeze. Because that you're storing, I think, longer term kind of issues there. On the other side, clearly there has to be a kind of a reframing, a refactoring of what the human being does in relation to the technology. I guess all I'd say is that most people think that everybody else is racing ahead of them. They think, oh, we're behind. It's like, trust me, you're not. And even if you were, your ability to kind of rapidly catch up, I think, is definitely possible.
Perfect. Okay, Jamie, quickly, you obviously work more on the content side of things. So do you have any advice for agencies that are trying to navigate some of these changes?
Yeah, I think the most succinct way I can put it is just take a beat. Because at the moment, everyone's diving full on into AI search. And as we've said, we're still working out the exact ins and outs of this. And even if you take the most optimistic prediction from, I think it was SEMrush last year, said that AI search will overtake Google search by, I think it was like Q1 to 2028. Now we can debate that whether that's actually safe, but take that as, even if we accept that, that's still 2 years away. And all that means is that Google search is here and AI search will eventually level with it and then overtake it in 2 years' time. So don't discount this. If your content is still ranking properly and optimized properly for traditional search, you should never overlook that in favor of AI search. Obviously, you should be trying to do both, and we're still trying to work out how we can do both most effectively. But there's still billions of people over here. Don't discount them for the new shiny thing.
And also, like we were mentioning earlier, these AI search systems are running a lot of the times on Google's traditional index. So definitely don't discount it. Andrew, really quickly,
well,
we have another slide.
One very quick point, which is simply that, yes, don't forget that even now, not every Google search triggers an AI overview. So in which case, your template links are still very important. We could debate the extent to which AI overviews do appear, but they're not 100% of the time, and it's definitely not 50% yet. So yeah, absolutely. I think throwing traditional kind of SEO out the window it would not be a good idea.
Lovely. Okay, and then I would say the biggest advice is to stay up to date with the changes as possible. So whether that means subscribing to AI search newsletters like ours, there's some other good ones that I follow, SEO FOMO by Aleda Solis, Kevin Indig's Growth Memo, and then following these contributors on LinkedIn. Oftentimes I find that they're the first ones to be posting about any changes. And a lot of them are actively doing that research and shaping the insights that we're using to know what's working and what's not. So I also recommend getting involved in communities with other agencies trying to navigate the same changes in AI. So like I mentioned, Andrew has an awesome WhatsApp group that I follow with, I think most of it is probably run by AI at this point, but lots of really great advances in AI search. But we also have a free SUSO partner club. This is one of the most valuable resources for agencies who are trying to get upskilled. And so we offer AI search or GEO workshops completely free to their clients. We do free trainings. We have a 24/7 help desk that connects you to our SEO specialists directly for any technical questions. And then we also do free white labeled AI visibility and SEO audits for your clients to get an understanding of how they're currently performing and what opportunities there are to improve their visibility. So join today for free. If you haven't yet, I'd love to work with you. And there's a QR code in the next slide to do that. We also have a link to our article, 10 SEO and AI search predictions for 2026. And then if you'd like to connect with the very talented Andrew on LinkedIn, highly recommend you do that. We barely have time for questions. We got 2 minutes. I know we had some activity in the chat. I'm glad we made it to the end without going over, so that's good. But yeah, please feel free. There's a couple minutes here left if you want to leave a comment in the top right. We can answer any questions that you guys have right now. I know Hugo had one about ChatGPT still using Bing. That hasn't happened for a while now. They effectively switched over to SERP API, which technically uses both Google and Bing, but in a lot of the research and what people are seeing, they're not seeing a lot of Bing anymore. Well, while we're waiting, quick question for you both. Who do you guys think is going to come out on top of the AI search race? Google, Perplexity, ChatGPT? Who's going to be the dominant?
I don't know. I feel like I'm saying this as a content person rather than someone who's kind of as au fait with the technical side of this as Andrew, but it feels like they all operate in different ways and they all are seemingly doing different things well. So it's not just a case of when Google was going up against, I don't know, Ask Jeeves or whatever, where it's like, who's bringing me the best results. It's how you actually want to, how you want that information to be delivered to you and what you're looking, the kind of things you're looking for, depending on which, I mean, maybe if you use it as much as we do, but at the same time, it's hard to tell if any of those platforms are going to be really suited to doing things in a universal way. And I'm sure they're all trying to work it out, but I'm not giving you a very committed answer here, but I think I just think it's a very difficult, it's too early to know if they can make this a universal experience.
That's fair. Andrew, do you have any thoughts or do you agree with Jamie?
Well, other than I find it amusing when people are saying, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, Google's dropped the ball in AI, and they're going to get wiped out in search. I was thinking, no. So of course, anything's possible, I guess, technically. But in terms of kind of winners and losers, Google, I think, is going to continue to dominate, certainly for the foreseeable future, which is not to discount the fact that, of course, the rise of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, etc., use as search engines is continuing to kind of rise at a kind of very, very impressive pace. But yeah, is SEMrush's prediction accurate? Who knows? Prediction's tough, particularly about the future. Most predictions are wrong.
Except for ours. Except for ours that we just.
Ours, yes, but
the last hour of our lives.
Yeah. No. It's. I think the honest answer is that I know people want an easier life, but the reality is that we have to accept you're going to have to continue to factor in Google as well as the ChatGPT and the rest of the lineup. That's just a hard reality that you can either ignore or otherwise.
The answer is inconclusive from everybody, but
as my fiance says to her students, she's a teacher, when she doesn't know the answer to something, she goes, "We just don't know."
And that's fair. Okay, I think we'll end it there. We are 2 minutes over. I know there's a couple stragglers still left in here, but I did not see any other questions come in. But if you do have any questions, like I said, join the partner club. You can get direct access to our AI search and SEO specialists. Follow Andrew on LinkedIn. You can chat with him there. Jamie, we'll send over this deck after this call. His contact info is there if you have any questions for him as well. But we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. For you folks in London, enjoy your evening. And Chicago, the rest of you, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.